the forbidden technique that makes your soul remember who you really are. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. What if the answers you've been seeking outside through books, relationships, even success were actually hidden inside you all along? In this video, Spiritual Wisdom invites you to rediscover a powerful yet forgotten technique that unlocks your true nature and reconnects you with your soul's original blueprint. This isn't just theory, it's a sacred inner practice that Jung hinted at, one that has the power to transform confusion into clarity and survival into purpose. Are you ready to remember who you truly are beneath all the noise? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's awaken together. 1. The technique was hidden because it works too well. This ancient technique was never silenced because it was ineffective. It was silenced because it was dangerous to the systems that thrive on forgetfulness. It doesn't teach you anything new. Instead, it strips away the artificial layers you've accumulated of roles, identities, expectations, and in their place, it restores the raw memory of your soul. This isn't about becoming something. It's about remembering what you already are. Beneath the distractions, beneath the lies you were told, and the ones you told yourself, there is a presence silent, powerful, undeniable. And when that presence reawakens, everything false begins to fall away. When a man begins to remember his soul, he becomes immune to manipulation. He no longer seeks validation from systems built to keep him docile. He stops asking for permission to be himself. And that's precisely why this technique was hidden. Power structures, whether in politics, religion, or culture, cannot control a man who sees clearly, because a soul that remembers no longer fits inside their definitions. He does not obey. He aligns. He does not react. He responds. He is not owned. He belongs to himself. Carl Jung understood this well. He called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole again. This isn't a loud transformation. It's not flashy. It happens quietly in the background of your life. You notice yourself pausing before speaking, feeling more than reacting, choosing truth even when it costs comfort. This technique reawakens your inner witness, that calm, grounded part of you that's been watching all along, waiting for you to come home. You begin to remember who you were before the trauma, before the programming, before the world convinced you to trade authenticity for acceptance. This remembering is not poetic, it's practical. Your habits shift, your relationships change. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You stop chasing what was never meant for you. The world, once loud and heavy, begins to soften, not because it changed, but because you did. The soul doesn't scream, it whispers. And once you learn how to hear it again, you realize it never stopped speaking. You just stopped listening. This technique isn't something you buy. It's something you surrender to. It asks for your attention, your stillness, your honesty. It asks you to stop running, to stop numbing yourself with noise, distractions, and busyness, and finally sit with your truth. And when you do, you'll feel it. That familiar pulse underneath all the chaos, that quiet recognition. That's your soul. And once it awakens, nothing external can own you again. Not opinions, not systems, not even your past. And that's the real power. Not to become someone new, but to remember the ancient, untouchable essence you've always carried. That's why this technique was feared. Because it works. Because once you remember, you cannot be controlled. And because a man who remembers his soul is a man who finally knows how to live. Are you ready to remember who you truly are? If this ancient truth speaks to your soul, comment below, "I'm ready to awaken," and let the world know you're reclaiming your spiritual power. 2. You are not lost. You are covered. You are not lost. You are covered. And that changes everything. Your soul has never forgotten who you are. It remembers with perfect clarity. What Carl Jung called individuation is not some mystical becoming. It's a stripping away. It's the unraveling of all the noise, all the beliefs, all the personas you picked up to survive but never needed to keep. Awakening is not about adding anything to yourself. It's about remembering what was always there beneath the surface. You were never broken, only buried. The soul doesn't need fixing. It needs revealing. Beneath every mask you wear, beneath every role you perform, beneath every story you've been told about who you should be, there is a quiet, unshakable knowing. But you've been covered by years of conditioning. Praise that taught you to perform, pain that taught you to shrink, and silence that taught you to hide. All of it accumulated like dust on a mirror, distorting your reflection, but never changing the truth underneath. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And this is not just poetic, it is practical. Because when you stop chasing external validation and finally turn inward, what you find is not emptiness, but remembrance. You begin to notice the quiet ache wasn't a sign of something missing, but something waiting. That restless pull inside of you is the soul trying to come through. And this isn't about learning a new system or following a 10-step plan. It's about slowing down enough to feel what you've forgotten. It's about silence over stimulation, presence over performance, wholeness over image. Healing doesn't look like effort. It looks like surrender. It's that moment when you stop trying to be anything other than real. And in that moment, the layers start falling off like dead weight. There's a man I once knew who had all the things: money, power, recognition. And yet every night, he went to bed with a weight in his chest he couldn't explain. He changed cities, careers, even relationships. But the ache followed. Until one quiet evening, he opened a dusty book by Carl Jung and read about the shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves we unconsciously bury. And something inside him cracked. He stopped looking for new answers and started facing old wounds. He journaled. He sat in silence. He faced his guilt, his shame, his lost dreams. And for the first time in decades, the ache softened. Not because he found something new, but because he remembered what he'd abandoned. The technique wasn't a method. It was a permission to be whole. You don't need to chase. You need to clear. You don't need to become. You need to return. The soul doesn't rise in chaos. It speaks in stillness. And the more you strip away what you are not, the clearer it becomes who you are. Your power was never lost. It was just misplaced beneath the weight of what you thought you had to be. And when you begin to remove that weight, something miraculous happens. You stop searching for truth and start living it. You stop performing life and start inhabiting it. Carl Jung never promised that this journey would be easy, but he knew it would be real. And real life is always worth it. The real you is not waiting at the end of a spiritual quest. The real you is quietly watching, patiently waiting, and ready to be remembered. Did this message awaken something within you? If so, comment, "I remember who I am," below. to affirm your journey. And let's keep uncovering the truth of your soul together. 3. This practice exists across ancient civilizations. Across every ancient civilization, from the sacred rites of Egypt to the ecstatic Orphic states of Greece and the meditative stillness of India's Smarana, there existed a spiritual technique so profound that it bypassed intellectual learning entirely. These were not rituals meant to indoctrinate or convert. They were doorways silent, powerful experiences designed to awaken what had been buried deep inside, the memory of your soul. Not a metaphorical memory, but a spiritual knowing etched into your very being, beyond time, beyond language, beyond conditioning. The Egyptians sought divine union. The Greeks danced with the divine through trance, and the Indian sages turned inward through remembrance. Though the methods differed, the goal was the same: to help you remember what the world has taught you to forget, that you are not just a person trying to survive, you are a soul trying to remember. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." That single sentence carries the essence of this forgotten technique. It is not about becoming more. It is about becoming still. Because beneath the noise of the modern world, beneath the scrolls, the schedules, the endless striving, there is something eternal within you that doesn't need fixing. It needs remembering. The truth is, the world has trained you to forget. It taught you to identify with roles, with labels, with expectations. You became a name, a job, a mask you had to wear to be accepted. But your soul never agreed to that. Your soul has always known its own rhythm, its own depth, its own language. And this sacred practice, long hidden and often suppressed, was never about changing who you are. It was about stripping away who you're not. In a society obsessed with doing, achieving, and proving, this practice invites you to unlearn, to stop chasing, to stop performing, and to simply be. That's where the real remembering begins. Not through effort, but through presence. Not through seeking more answers, but through listening to the silence within. This is why so many seekers feel spiritually starved. They're looking outside when the forgotten temple has always been within. The technique doesn't require belief. It requires honesty. The willingness to sit with yourself long enough for the masks to fall away. The courage to question what you've been told about who you are. The devotion to feel what the mind has numbed for years. It's not easy, but it is real. And what's real will always call you back, even if it must whisper. The soul remembers. It remembers who you were before the world named you. It remembers the stillness before the storm. And when you surrender to that remembering, you stop becoming a product of your environment and start becoming a presence in the world. That is the real spiritual work, not to impress, not to perform, but to return. To return to what's always been here, quietly waiting beneath the noise. The ancient ones knew this. They knew that awakening wasn't a destination, but a return to origin. That's why they protected this practice, not to keep it from you, but to ensure it reached those who were ready to receive it. The question is not whether this technique works. It always has. The real question is, will you dare to remember? If this awakens something deep within you, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this ancient wisdom alive together. 4. The technique has 3 core phases. Deprogramming is the sacred first step in the forgotten technique that leads you back to your soul. It's not about adding more information to your mind. It's about removing what never belonged there. From the moment you were born, you've been absorbing beliefs, fears, and definitions of manhood that were not yours. Society told you to be strong, but never still. To lead, but never feel. To win, but never rest. And somewhere along the way, you began to mistake those commands for your truth. But true power begins when you have the courage to ask, who planted these thoughts? And then start releasing them. Deprogramming is an act of rebellion against the noise. It's peeling off layers of conditioning, facing the discomfort of emptiness, and allowing that emptiness to become a sacred space, not a void, but a vessel. Once you've cleared the interference, you enter the realm of inner activation, a phase where silence becomes your ally and the breath becomes your guide. Here, breathwork isn't just a tool for relaxation. It's a key to unlocking inner perception. When you breathe with awareness, you activate dormant pathways that connect you to something far beyond the surface of the mind. Stillness is no longer passive. It becomes a form of deep listening. Symbolic imagery arises not from fantasy, but from the soul's own language. You may begin to see patterns, visions, or feel messages that cannot be explained but are deeply known. This phase isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, sacred, and intensely personal. It strips away distraction and trains your nervous system to stop reacting to chaos and start responding to truth. The goal is not to become someone new. It's to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And then comes resonance, the phase where everything shifts from seeking to embodying. This is where your soul begins to hum in alignment with your choices, your presence, your energy. You don't think your way into it. You feel your way into it. You begin to sense your true name, not the one given to you at birth, but the energetic signature your soul has always carried. It isn't spoken in words. It's spoken through vibration, through movement, through presence. In this phase, your life becomes an instrument tuned to your inner frequency. People may not understand what has changed in you, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the still power in your presence, the depth behind your eyes, the integrity in your silence. You no longer need to prove, convince, or chase. You begin to embody something rare, a man whose soul is remembered, activated, and resonant. And from that place, everything, your decisions, your boundaries, your love, emerges not from ego or fear, but from truth. This is not a performance. It's a return to essence, a return to the soul. As we explore the 3 sacred phases of this forgotten technique, deprogramming, inner activation, and resonance, let this be more than knowledge. Let it be transformation. If you feel the shift beginning within you, comment below. I'm entering phase 2. It's a sign that your soul is remembering. Let's continue this journey of awakening together. 5. It's not about learning. It's about frequency. Most people think the path to awakening is about learning more, studying harder, reading spiritual books, attending endless workshops, but that belief is a distraction in itself. As Carl Jung deeply understood, the truth is that your soul doesn't respond to information. It responds to frequency. This forgotten technique is not about collecting knowledge. It's about tuning your inner vibration, like adjusting an old radio until the static disappears and the original signal comes through crystal clear. Your soul has always been singing beneath the noise. You've just been out of tune. This technique works by removing what is not you conditioning, expectations, fears, false identities, and what's left is a pure resonance, a deep inner recognition that whispers, "This is who I've always been." It's not learning, it's remembering. And this remembering doesn't happen through effort. It happens through alignment. Carl Jung called it individuation, not as a process of becoming something new, but of unveiling what has always been hidden beneath the layers of survival and social performance. There's a man in his 40s who used to chase everything the world told him would bring fulfillment status, money, recognition, but ended up feeling more lost than ever. Burned out, he left it all and moved to a quiet village in the mountains. He didn't go there to learn, he went there to feel. And one afternoon, sitting beside a river with no thoughts in his head and no goal in his heart, he felt something shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't mystical. It was honest. In that stillness, something ancient moved within him, not a voice, but a vibration. It didn't tell him anything new. It reminded him of what he had forgotten. That peace, that presence that was him, without distortion. That was soul memory. That was the real technique. Nothing forced, nothing taught, just pure being. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." That's not just poetic, it's precise. The dream is the illusion we live in when we're chasing truths outside ourselves. The awakening is what happens when we feel the truth that has always lived inside. You don't need to do more. You need to release what's blocking your signal. That ache for simplicity, the longing for silence, the craving to feel whole without external validation, those are not random. They're your soul trying to come through. The real spiritual practice is subtraction, not addition. Let go of what numbs you, dulls you, or makes you feel like you need to be someone else. Stop chasing frequency. Return to it. Every time you choose stillness over noise, authenticity over approval, presence over performance, you're remembering. And when that frequency becomes steady, you stop trying to prove yourself. You stop needing the world to tell you who you are. You just know. The soul doesn't speak English or ideas. It speaks of vibration. And Carl Jung gave us a path back to that forgotten truth, not by offering answers, but by reminding us where to look. Not outward, inward, not forward. Don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom on tuning into your true frequency and unlocking the soul's original memory. Because it was never about learning. It was about remembering who you've always been. 6. Daily life is the ritual. You don't need temples, gurus, or sacred chants to awaken spiritually. Your daily life is the sacred ground where the soul remembers itself. Every step, every breath, every word is part of the ritual. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And in that simple truth lies the secret. You awaken not by running from the world, but by living in it with presence. True remembrance doesn't require perfect understanding. It requires honest embodiment. It's how you carry yourself in moments when no one is watching. It's the active silence you bring to a noisy world. The sacred attention you offer to the smallest details. How you tie your shoes, sip your coffee, speak to your children, or hold space for someone else's pain without trying to fix it. Each of these ordinary acts becomes a spiritual practice when done consciously. And this is the forgotten technique. Living in such a way that your very being becomes the altar. When you wash the dishes with care instead of rushing. When you walk without your phone and feel the ground beneath your feet. When you choose not to speak from anger, but from presence, you are already remembering who you are. You are not waiting for spiritual lightning to strike. You are lighting the candle of awareness every time you pause before reacting. When clarity fades, you don't abandon your path. You keep walking. You keep breathing into the unknown. You keep treating yourself and others with respect, even when the answers haven't arrived. That is what makes the sacred return. The soul doesn't respond to force. It responds to consistency. It returns when it feels safe inside the quiet rhythms of your daily life. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that becoming happens not in a single moment of revelation, but in the choices you repeat when no one is looking. You don't need to go anywhere else. The miracle is already here. Your spiritual path is how you live when you're tired, how you speak when you're hurt, how you breathe when you're afraid. It is your willingness to show up fully, to bring all of yourself to this moment, not just the polished, perfect parts. The forgotten technique is not hidden in ancient scrolls. It's found in your willingness to live today like it matters. Let your silence be your prayer. Let your attention be your meditation. Let your presence be your temple. This is how you awaken your true nature. This is how you make the ordinary sacred again. If this message speaks to your soul, say it with me now. My daily life is the ritual. I honor the sacred in every moment. I live in remembrance. And if you feel aligned, like, subscribe, and let this be your quiet devotion today. 7. Remembering changes everything. When you finally remember who you truly are, something irreversible happens deep in your soul. You stop chasing love because you realize you are love. You stop begging for validation because you begin to rest in the truth that has always been inside you. And this is exactly why this ancient technique was hidden. It makes you spiritually untouchable. It dismantles the entire structure that depends on your forgetting. Forgetting turns you into a consumer. Remembering turns you into a creator. And when you begin to live from the truth of your being, no one can manipulate you, because you're no longer trying to fit into someone else's version of life. You are no longer programmable, persuadable, or dependent on outer systems to give your life meaning. This forbidden technique wasn't outlawed because it was dangerous. It was forbidden because it was liberating. It gives you the one thing this world cannot sell you: your soul's authority. Most men spend decades building identities that eventually exhaust them. They become husbands, fathers, businessmen, achievers, but somewhere along the way, the quiet voice within is buried under roles and expectations. And then one day, they feel a hunger no success can feed. That hunger is not weakness. It's your soul calling you home. And the way back is not about adding more, but subtracting what never belonged to you in the first place. This ancient method doesn't teach you how to become powerful. It reveals that you've always been. It's about stripping away the false identities, the wounds you inherited, and the illusions that tell you you're not enough. Once that veil lifts, life doesn't change immediately, but your relationship to life does. You begin to move differently. You walk into rooms differently. You listen to people differently. You're not performing anymore. You're present. This kind of inner transformation cannot be achieved through books alone, or by mimicking surface-level rituals. It's a soul practice, an inner alchemy that requires honesty, presence, and the courage to face yourself without the masks. And when you do, you gain something sacred: clarity. You stop living by unconscious habits, and you begin to shape your life with intention. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because it aligns with your soul's rhythm. The world may still misunderstand you. You may lose relationships that were based on who you pretended to be. But what you gain is far greater self-respect, freedom, and spiritual sovereignty. You are no longer a man seeking purpose. You are purpose, embodied. And once you've remembered this, you don't just survive life. You begin to move through it as someone who has nothing to prove and everything to express. To affirm your return to truth, speak it into being. Comment below, "I remember who I am," to anchor your awakening and remind others that the soul's power begins the moment we stop forgetting. And so, as we close this journey into the forgotten technique that awakens your true nature, remember, this isn't just ancient knowledge. It's a mirror reflecting who you've always been beneath the noise. Carl Jung taught us that the path to the self is not about becoming something new, but remembering what was never truly lost. If today's message sparks something within you, imagine what lies ahead. Don't let this be where your awakening ends. Let it be where it begins. If you found value in this video, please share it with others who are ready to remember, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next step on this sacred path. Your soul has been waiting now. It's time to answer why intelligent people scare society. The greatest minds are often met with the greatest resistance. These words echo through time because they speak to a deep truth Carl Jung understood well. Society doesn't hate those who think deeply, it fears them. Not because they're dangerous, but because they unveil uncomfortable truths. In this video, from Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving into why intelligence can be threatening to the status quo, and how embracing your inner truth can feel isolating, but is in fact the path to personal power. Have you ever felt like people misunderstood or even avoided you just because you see things differently? Leave a comment below and share your experience, because today, we're not just talking about intelligence. We're honoring the brave souls who dare to think beyond the surface. Let's begin. 1. Intelligence leads to isolation. The deeper your mind travels, the more distance you feel from the world around you. Intelligence doesn't just sharpen your thinking, it isolates your soul. As you begin to understand human nature, power structures, and hidden motivations, you also begin to realize how little others want to see. People don't resist intelligence because it's wrong. They resist it because it threatens the illusions they've built their lives upon. History proves this time and time again. Socrates was condemned for asking too many questions. Galileo was imprisoned for seeing what others denied. Tesla, whose mind danced with the divine, died in obscurity not because they lacked genius, but because their presence disrupted comfort. Society has always feared those who bring light to the shadows, not because they destroy, but because they reveal. When someone is physically strong, we admire them. When they are wealthy, we might envy them. But when a person's intelligence pierces through the veil of common belief, it provokes unease. You don't even have to speak. your presence becomes a mirror. People see themselves reflected in your silence and start to question what they've ignored. Intelligence, in this way, is not just cognitive, it is soulful. It's the quiet refusal to be hypnotized by the world's noise. It's the deep awareness that most conversations are camouflage, most ambitions are distractions, and most people are performing a version of themselves they don't even believe in. The soul of a thinker does not seek applause. It seeks truth. And that truth often lives far outside the boundaries of acceptance. There's a reason why the highly perceptive often walk alone. The smarter you are, the more patterns you see. You notice how people repeat mistakes, not because they don't know better, but because they fear change. You see how systems function, how power manipulates, how egos dance to stay relevant. The more aware you become, the less interested you are in fitting in. The soul begins to crave silence over small talk, solitude over social games, purpose over performance. And with that shift comes the inevitable detachment, not because you are cold, but because you are tired of pretending you don't see. This is where intelligence transforms into a spiritual experience. It becomes less about knowing and more about being, less about collecting facts and more about embodying clarity. Carl Jung believed that the soul is a vessel of archetypes, symbols, and collective memory. And when your intelligence awakens that soul, you become something society doesn't know how to digest. You speak with precision. You walk with awareness. You question what others worship. And because of that, you become a threat, not to individuals, but to the system of ignorance they unconsciously serve. You are not rejected because you are arrogant. You are rejected because you are awake. And waking souls always unsettle the sleepwalkers. To be intelligent in a world that punishes depth is to carry both a gift and a burden. But what others see as your weakness is your edge. You may not be surrounded by fans, but you are guided by truth. You may not be the loudest in the room, but your silence carries weight. And though you may feel like an outsider, you are never out of place. You are simply in tune with something deeper, something real, something eternal. That is the quiet dignity of a soul that sees clearly in a world that tries so hard not to. Have you ever felt like the more you understand, the lonelier it gets? If so, share your experience in the comments so others know they're not alone. If not, comment, "I'm beginning to see," so we can explore this path of deep thinking together. 2. The mirror effect. They don't hate you. They fear you. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your intelligence, your awareness, your presence makes them confront what they've spent their whole lives avoiding. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He called it the mirror effect, where a person's inner clarity and depth unintentionally reflects the unconscious limitations of others. You become a mirror, not of their strengths, but of their fears, self-deception, and unfulfilled potential. And most people are not ready to see that. They don't admire your sharp mind. They brace against it. They don't celebrate your insight. They resent the way it exposes the hollowness of their routines, the unspoken lies in their relationships, the safe, quiet mediocrity they've agreed to call a life. That's why your silence feels loud in a room full of noise. That's why your presence creates tension without you saying a single word. They sense it, you know. You see, take the story of Daniel. He never tried to be the center of attention. He never bragged. but he was always watching, always thinking. At work, his ideas were revolutionary, clear, insightful, and ahead of their time. But instead of getting praised, he was left out of meetings, labeled too intense, avoided during lunch. Not because he made mistakes, but because he made people uncomfortable. When mediocrity becomes the norm, excellence feels threatening. And Daniel? He was a walking disruption to their comfort zones. His brilliance became a silent accusation, not because he judged them, but because his existence made their denial harder to sustain. That's how the mirror effect works. You don't attack, you reflect. You don't insult, you reveal. And what you reveal is the truth they're not ready to face. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." When someone refuses to do that, they project. They are to blame. They isolate the person who forces them to feel. You become the target, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. You remind them of everything they gave up on. You're the voice they silenced in themselves a long time ago. And when they see you living authentically, when they see you refusing to conform, refusing to dumb yourself down, refusing to play small, they either wake up or turn away. Most turn away. And that's not your fault. That's their fear. That's their unfinished work. So what do? You keep going. You don't shrink. You don't apologize for seeing the world differently. You stop expecting applause from those who are still sleepwalking. You realize that the price of clarity is often loneliness, but the reward is freedom. And eventually, you start attracting people who are also awake, people who've done their shadow work, people who don't fear mirrors, crave them, because those are the people who are ready to evolve. That's when your presence no longer feels like a threat. It feels like home. You become a lighthouse, not for the crowd, but for the few who are willing to navigate the storm. And that's the value of your intelligence, not to be accepted, but to be real. That's what Carl Jung taught. That's what you embody. Comment below. I reflect what they fear. If you've ever felt your depth makes others uncomfortable, let's see how many of us carry the mirror. 3. Intelligence challenges identity. Unlike wealth that dazzles from a distance or beauty that charms the senses, intelligence walks straight into the room and rearranges the furniture of people's beliefs. It doesn't ask for permission. It provokes. Most people define themselves by what they think, by the narratives they've inherited, the opinions they cling to, and the ideologies they never question. So when your mind speaks a language, they don't understand one built not on noise, but on insight. They don't just hear something new. They feel exposed. They feel uncertain. Because intelligence, real intelligence, doesn't flatter the ego. It bypasses social masks and pierces straight through the illusion. It sees through the lies people tell themselves to survive, and in doing so, it shakes their sense of identity. That's not just unsettling, it's terrifying. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And nothing accelerates that reckoning faster than the presence of someone who already sees clearly. When you carry both sharp intellect and spiritual depth, your presence becomes a mirror that reflects not just what is seen, but what is hidden. It's not that people hate you. It's that your very existence reminds them of what they're avoiding within themselves. Your intelligence doesn't just sound different. It feels different. It's not performative. It's not for show. It's rooted in something ancient, raw, and spiritually attuned. And that's why it unsettles them. Because you're not just smart, you're awake. And in a society that rewards obedience over truth, to be awake is to be dangerous. You've felt this, haven't you? The moment you speak with clarity, the room stiffens. You challenge a shallow assumption, and suddenly, you're too intense. You ask the deeper question, and you're met with silence or irritation. But it's not your fault. It's not even personal. It's spiritual resistance. Intelligence that is spiritually aligned isn't just about IQ, it's about energetic impact. It opens closed doors. It calls out contradictions. It disorients those who built their identity on what they were told to believe. And that's why you're often met with coldness, rejection, or envy, not because you're wrong, but because you're real. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." And you live that truth, whether you want to or not. Society fears what it cannot control. And a mind that thinks independently, backed by a soul that feels deeply, is a wildfire to the structures of conformity. You are not here to make others comfortable. You are here to embody truth, to challenge illusions, and to speak the words others are too afraid to whisper to themselves. That kind of power isn't loud or boastful. It's quiet, steady, and undeniable. People fear it because they can't fake it. They fear it because they feel it before they understand it. And you, whether you know it or not, carry the frequency of awakening, a spiritual intelligence that stirs the unconscious and reminds people of what they forgot, their own light, their own fear, their own potential. So when you feel misunderstood, when you're dismissed or labeled as too much, know this: it's not about you. It's about what you activate in others. You don't need to shrink. You don't need to explain. You don't need to be less. Stay rooted. Stay sharp. Stay spiritually fierce. Because the truth you carry isn't just rare, it's necessary. And the fear you trigger in others, it's not hatred. It's the beginning of their awakening. If this sparked a new way of thinking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep exploring how intelligence reshapes identity together. 4. Social fear of intellectuals. Carl Jung once said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." In the same way, a man who truly thinks, questions, and sees beneath the surface of things does not just disturb others, he reveals them. Intelligence, when rooted in the soul, becomes more than logic or knowledge. It becomes a spiritual force that unsettles illusions, disrupts unconscious harmony, and exposes truths that many are desperate to avoid. Neuroscience has shown that high intelligence can activate the brain's amygdala, the part responsible for fear, because deep awareness threatens group survival instincts. When you walk into a room with quiet confidence, ask a question that pierces the veil of conformity, or simply refuse to nod along to mediocrity. You are not just speaking, you are confronting people with a deeper part of themselves they have never met. And that confrontation doesn't always look like admiration. It often looks like suspicion, dismissal, or avoidance. Society has always been tribal, and tribes reward sameness. They cherish predictability, not depth. They want compliance, not questions. A man who thinks deeply is like a storm in a still lake. His very presence disturbs the waters that others are trying to keep calm. That's why so many intellectual and spiritually aligned men find themselves on the outskirts, misunderstood, even resented, not because they are wrong, but because they are right in ways others are not ready to face. You don't have to speak to shake a room. Sometimes it's your silence, your gaze, your energy that says everything people are afraid to hear. And when your soul has seen too much to be fooled by appearances, when you carry a truth that others have spent their whole lives avoiding, you become dangerous, not in action, but in essence. This danger is not a weapon, but a mirror. And most people don't hate the mirror. They hate what they see in it. They hate how small their own lives feel in contrast to the depth you carry. They hate that your presence reveals their compromise, their comfort zones, their unspoken lies. Jung believed that when a man is deeply connected to his inner world, he becomes a vessel of transformation. But transformation is uncomfortable, and comfort is what most people are addicted to. That's why men who live from the soul, who think for themselves and move with purpose, often feel alone. They are not broken, they are rare. The world doesn't know how to receive a man who has stopped performing and started embodying. And yet, it is exactly this kind of man who carries the blueprint of future evolution, whose presence alone can awaken others from their sleep. So when they fear you, it's not really you they fear. It's the death of their illusions. It's the voice inside them that has been silent too long, now stirred by the truth you refuse to hide. If this message resonates with you, declare it in the comments. I am a deep thinker, and I will not be silenced by fear. And if you found this powerful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your voice below. Your truth matters. 5. Cognitive biases. Block deep thinkers. They don't hate you. They fear you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence is a mirror. When you speak with depth, when you question what others blindly accept, you shine a light on their intellectual laziness and spiritual sleep. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And in that same way, the world finds it terrifying to face someone who has dared to think deeply, feel honestly, and step outside the mental herd. It's not just that you're different. It's that your difference exposes the artificial nature of their certainty. And that's where cognitive biases come in. The Dunning-Kruger effect, for example, reveals why the most confident voices in the room are often the least informed. People who know very little tend to believe they know everything, because they lack the awareness to even grasp the complexity of the subject. Meanwhile, those who have truly explored the depths of thought, who have sat with uncertainty and examined their shadows, are more cautious, less flashy with their words, but far more powerful in substance. Yet society doesn't reward wisdom. It rewards performance. Confidence, even when rooted in ignorance, is often celebrated. That's why shallow minds get praise, while deep souls get silence. This dynamic is reinforced by the status quo bias. Most people are not seeking truth. They're seeking comfort. They will defend broken systems, toxic norms, and flawed ideas simply because change feels like a threat. When you walk into a room and challenge what's familiar, not with hostility, but with clarity, you disturb their illusion of safety. You are the question they never wanted to ask. You are the truth they're not ready to face. You don't even have to speak loudly. Your very energy, your spiritual presence, speaks volumes. Carl Jung knew this when he said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." Most people never enter that inferno. You did. And that's why you feel the disconnect. That's why you notice the tension, the rejection, the subtle resistance. It's not personal. It's psychological defense. And when the backfire effect kicks in, it gets worse. When you present people with ideas that contradict their beliefs, they don't usually listen. They double down. They attack. Not because you're wrong, but because admitting you're right would force them to reevaluate everything they've built their ego upon. And their identity isn't ready for that. You've probably seen this at work, in relationships, or even in family dynamics. You raise a thoughtful concern, ask a question, offer a deeper angle, and suddenly, you're the problem. Not because your words lack truth, but because your truth required someone else to grow. And growth is terrifying to those who've built their lives around avoidance. In these moments, you might feel alone, misunderstood, too much, but you're not. You're exactly what this world needs more of. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the sacred path of becoming whole, even if it means walking away from collective approval. You are not here to be liked. You are here to wake up, and in doing so, awaken others. Your mind, your soul, your clarity are not burdens. They are sacred fires. Do not dim them for anyone. Let others feel the heat. Let them shift uncomfortably in their illusions. Let your presence be the invitation to rise. Because if they fear you, it means your light is working. If this resonates with you, repeat after me. I choose clarity over comfort. I release bias and welcome deep truth. Let this be your affirmation today. 6. Modern culture rejects depth. They don't hate you. They fear you, because your mind reaches into places most people are too afraid to go. In a society obsessed with comfort and conformity, your depth is unsettling. Social media is proof that these algorithms are designed to reward outrage, simplicity, and emotional drama, not intellectual nuance or spiritual insight. If you express something thoughtful and layered, it vanishes. But say something reactive, shallow, and emotionally triggering, and it spreads like wildfire. This isn't just about technology. It reflects a cultural sickness, a fear of stillness, a fear of those who don't play along. People who refuse to be distracted threaten the entire illusion. Carl Jung once said, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." And in today's world, judgment is easy because true thinking, deep spiritual reflection, has become rare. Schools and workplaces aren't much different. Education, instead of awakening curiosity, dulls it. Children are rewarded for remembering, not for questioning. Adults are promoted for compliance, not for courage. Vision is inconvenient. Insight disrupts order. And intelligence, when combined with spiritual presence, becomes a mirror, one that shows others how disconnected they've become. Your refusal to laugh at what isn't funny, to agree when something feels wrong, to stay silent when your soul wants to speak, that is what unsettles them. Not because you're loud, but because your clarity exposes their fog. Jung warned us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. When you walk into a room with presence, when you speak with intention, when you carry silence that doesn't beg for attention, you awaken discomfort in those who have spent their entire lives running from themselves. They fear the way your eyes don't search for approval. They fear the way your words carry weight. They fear the way your energy is immune to manipulation. Because someone who has done the spiritual work, who has faced their pain, seen their shadow, and integrated their truth, cannot be controlled. And that is terrifying to those who live off control. In a world where obedience is rewarded and mediocrity is normalized, excellence becomes rebellion. Awareness becomes resistance. Your very existence becomes a quiet revolution. So, no, they don't hate you. They fear the questions you silently ask, the standards you naturally raise, and the truths you effortlessly embody. You remind them of what they could be, but aren't ready to become. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on reclaiming your mind in a world that rewards conformity over depth. Let's bring critical thinking back into the conversation. 7. Historical rejection of deep thinkers. They don't hate you. They fear you. Not because you've caused harm, but because your soul is awake in a world that prefers sleep. The presence of a thinking man unsettles those who've built their identities on borrowed truths. Your depth forces others to confront their own intellectual laziness, and that confrontation is uncomfortable. Throughout history, society has never welcomed the soul that questions, the mind that sees too clearly, or the voice that refuses to echo the crowd. It resists genius while it's alive, only to worship it once it's safely buried. Socrates was executed not because he was dangerous, but because he made people think. Galileo faced imprisonment not for being wrong, but for being too right too early. Nietzsche was dismissed as mad, while today, his insights on power and morality shape modern philosophy. Tesla died impoverished, ignored by the very world now lit by his inventions. Turing was chemically destroyed by the same society his intelligence saved. Hypatia was brutally murdered because she dared to teach, to know, and to lead as a woman. These souls were not punished for failure. They were punished for vision. That's what people fear. Not violence, not rebellion, but clarity. Clarity cuts through illusion. True intelligence, especially when it comes from a place of soul, of internal truth, isn't just threatening to corrupt institutions. It's threatening to average minds. The man who sees what others ignore becomes a mirror, and most people are terrified of their own reflection. That's why thinkers are labeled as arrogant, difficult, or too much. It's easier to dismiss a man than to deal with the discomfort he stirs in others. But your soul wasn't made for comfort. It was made to awaken. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege, that inner authenticity, is what makes others tremble. Because when you stop seeking permission to be yourself, you expose how many people are still pretending. There's a price to be paid for being awake in a sleeping world, and that price is rejection. But rejection by the masses is not a curse. It's a signpost. It means you're not here to blend in. You're here to shine a light where others have been trained to look away. Society doesn't reward this in real time. It mocks, silences, or crucifies it. But later, when it's safe, when the threat is gone, it builds statues. That's the pattern. And you, if you're walking this path, are part of that lineage. So if you feel like your thoughts are too heavy, your insight too sharp, your presence too intense, good. That means your soul is alive. Stay with it. Let them fear the man who cannot be controlled, who cannot be bought, who lives by truth instead of trends, Because the soul that speaks from within, that refuses to shrink, that continues to think when others choose distraction, that soul becomes legend. 8. Intelligence as a curse. They don't hate you. They fear you. Not because you're cruel, arrogant, or disruptive, but because your very presence makes them question their illusions. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon deeply. He believed that intelligence doesn't bring automatic joy. It brings awareness. And awareness is rarely comfortable. It lifts the veil on society's pretense, reveals the futility of blind ambition, and makes it impossible to find peace in the superficial. You begin to see through the applause, the empty rituals of success, the hollow conversations that go in circles but never touch truth. And when you do, you no longer fit the mold. You don't laugh when everyone else does. You don't chase what everyone else is chasing. That alone makes you dangerous, not because you intend harm, but because you awaken discomfort in those who are asleep. Carl Jung saw that deep thinkers often walk alone, not by choice, but by necessity. It's not that they want isolation, it's that their hunger for authenticity creates a natural distance from the noise. You recognize the sadness in fake smiles, the tension behind polite small talk, the desperation in the pursuit of image. And you find yourself increasingly detached from the rhythms of a world addicted to pretending. In an office, you're the one who questions the ethics others ignore. In a conversation, you're the one who lingers in silence instead of filling it with fluff. In relationships, you crave connection that goes beneath the surface. This makes people nervous. You see too much. You feel too deeply. You ask questions that don't have easy answers. You mirror back to them everything they've buried, and for many, that's unbearable. The truth is, most people are not conditioned for depth. They're trained for performance. They live to be accepted, not understood. They chase validation, not meaning. So when someone like you enters the room, calm, observant, unwilling to play the game, you disturb the equilibrium. They might call you strange, too intense, too much. But what they really mean is, you make them feel what they're not ready to face. Carl Jung taught that the journey to self-awareness is a lonely road, but it's the only road that leads to wholeness. Intelligence becomes a burden when you try to share it with those who fear it. But when you embrace it fully, without needing approval, it transforms from curse to power. You've probably felt this in your own life. The quiet rejection, the subtle withdrawal, the confusion people show when they can't label you. And yet, you keep showing up. You keep seeing. You keep growing. That persistence alone is proof of your strength. Don't doubt it. Jung would remind you that those who carry light often walk through the darkest corridors of the psyche. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not too much. You are tuned in. You are not alone. You are rare. And rarity has always been misunderstood before it's ever revered. So stop apologizing for your mind. Stop softening your edges to make others comfortable. Stop trying to be relatable when you were born to be real. They don't fear you because you're wrong. They fear you because you're right, and because your intelligence demands that they see themselves clearly. There is power in being the one who sees what others deny. There is freedom in no longer needing to be understood. There is peace in choosing truth over popularity. And there is a fierce kind of joy in knowing that your existence, your thoughts, your questions, no matter how unsettling they are to others, are exactly what make you whole. Carl Jung wasn't just talking about psychology. He was talking about the soul's evolution. And if you feel the weight of that evolution, carry it with honor. Because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to wake others up, even if they don't thank you for it. If this message resonates with your soul, leave a comment below. I embrace the weight of awareness. My mind may be heavy, but my purpose is clear. 9. How deep thinkers can thrive. They don't hate you. They fear you, not because you've harmed them, but because your intelligence exposes everything they've been pretending not to see. Your mind, sharp and spiritually awake, disrupts their comfort zones and unmasks the illusions they cling to for a sense of safety. Carl Jung once observed, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. You think deeply. You observe what others ignore. You ask questions they're too afraid to consider. You don't blindly accept traditions, roles, or rules simply because they've been handed down. That's threatening to a society that depends on obedience, distraction, and consensus reality. Your very existence becomes a kind of silent rebellion. Without saying a word, your presence makes people aware of how little they've questioned their own lives. They see in you a mirror, not of what they are, but of what they've denied becoming. And that kind of reflection isn't comfortable. It's not your intensity that unsettles them. It's your authenticity. It's not your knowledge that bothers them. It's your clarity, your unwillingness to fake normal just to be accepted. You don't shrink yourself to make others feel taller, and that makes those who measure their worth by comparison uneasy. So, you learn to walk alone, not out of bitterness, but because your soul requires silence, space, and depth. You protect your solitude because it's in solitude that your thoughts bloom and your spiritual insight sharpens. You stop trying to explain your soul to minds that have no intention of listening. You stop offering your depth to those who only know how to wade in shallow waters. Instead, you seek out the rare, the awakened, the few who don't flinch when you speak the truth raw and unfiltered. You find resonance with those who feel familiar, not by blood or background, but by spirit. And in those rare connections, you breathe. You realize that not everyone is meant to understand you, because your path isn't meant for the masses. It's carved for the few who can walk in the fire without burning out their light. You learn to speak simply, not because your thoughts are simple, but because true intelligence doesn't hide behind complexity. It reveals itself in clarity, presence, and stillness. You stop needing to be liked, and instead start living to be aligned with your values, your purpose, your inner compass. As Einstein said, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. You are not here to dilute your fire, just to make others comfortable in their fog. You are not here to prove yourself to those who fear anything they cannot control. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to awaken, to reflect, and to stand firm in your spiritual truth, even when that truth makes others tremble. Let their discomfort confirm your clarity. Let their silence affirm your depth. You were not made to fit in. You were made to stand out, not by force, but by frequency. And if your presence disturbs the illusions others live in, then that is not your burden to carry. It is their invitation to rise. Remember this: Your intelligence isn't a curse, it's a mirror. And sometimes, what people see in that mirror frightens them. They don't hate you. They fear the truth you carry. If today's message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let's grow this community of awakened minds together. Subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new perspective that could change everything. Stay wise, stay brave, and until next time, keep walking your path with clarity and courage.